It's time for Tycoons of Small Biz, spotlighting the true backbone of the American economy, the true tycoons of business in America, the owners, founders, and CEOs of small businesses. The show's hosts, Austin Peterson and Landon Nance, are registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors Corporation, a broker-dealer, member SIPC, and registered investment advisor. The views expressed by your hosts, Austin and Landon, are not necessarily the views of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Backbone Planning Partners is a marketing name for registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Now let's lean in as Austin and Landon connect with this week's Tycoons.
Good afternoon, Tycoons, and welcome to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. I'm your host here, as always, Austin Peterson, coming to you live from the Backbone Planning Partners offices in Las Vegas, Nevada. If this is the first time that you're listening to Tycoons of Small Biz and you're wondering what it is that we do here, we are a podcast that's put together by small business owners for small business owners. Landon and I own a business together. We've got other partners in the program as well that own small businesses. And we believe that the backbone of the American economy is the small business owner throughout our country. And so in May of 2020, we decided what better time than to start a podcast that highlights small businesses throughout the country. We call it Tycoons of Small Biz because we believe that there are business leaders inside of small businesses that we would put up against any business leader throughout the country. And we definitely have a tycoon on the program today with us. Today, we've got Scott Scarano coming to us live from Raleigh, North Carolina. Scott, welcome to the show.
Live and direct. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So Scott, I typically don't do this, but I'm gonna read your bio because I found it so compelling. So Scott, first of all, is the president of Paget Business Services in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I've just got to read this word for word because I thought it was very well written and very indicative of the Scott Scarano that I've come to know over the last month or so. So it says, Scott Scarano is an eccentric entrepreneur with the heart of a lion and the soul of a house cat. Scott loves approaching problems from a different perspective and analyzing solutions. Scott's why is empowering all growth-minded entrepreneurs in his reach to thrive and prosper. Scott's Paget team is filled with passionate advisors with unique personalities who share the same virtues of empathy and integrity in everything they do. Scott did the school thing and has the credentials, but his real value comes from his questioning mind and grit to push through any adversity. Scott lives in Raleigh, North Carolina, bleeds Carolina blue, and dedicates himself to his astonishing wife, Juana, and three surprisingly intelligent kids, Julia, Frankie, and Aria. And Scott loves weed. So I found that a very interesting, compelling, humorous, but unique bio, I guess is the way that I would put it. So what's your response to that, Scott?
Good friend of mine wrote it for me early last year. I needed a bio for something, forgot what it was, and she wrote it. She said, I'll write it for you. And I liked it a lot. So I chopped it up and put it in my LinkedIn too. I feel like I need to update parts of it though. I feel like my why is shifting a little bit. You know, what drives me, what keeps me up at night, what wakes me up in the morning, which I'm not really a morning person, but yeah, I mean, that shifts over time, I believe. I mean, at its core, I'm the same person, but what I'm driven by, what motivates me and all that has kind of shifted over time.
Yeah. Well, so let's back up a little bit, and before we jump into the business side of things and what really drives you today, and maybe the answer is kind of in the same vein here, but you know, we read the bio. It talks about your wife Juana and your three kids, Julia, Frankie, and Aria. But tell us a little bit about you personally. Where did you grow up? I mean, you said you did the school thing and that you have the credentials, but tell us a little bit about that. What was it like to grow up as Scott, and kind of what led you to starting, getting involved with Paget?
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of questioned everything growing up, but most of it was questioning authority or questioning what I could or couldn't do and pushing the limits. I'd say I had a pretty normal, like suburban childhood growing up. My parents moved from New York down to Cary, North Carolina, which is right next to Raleigh. And yeah, I mean, high school was not normal because we were this is a growing area. So brand new high school we were the first graduating class from that high school. So I never had any upperclassmen, which maybe is part of why I always question things and question authority because I never had any upperclassmen in the way. Which was a great thing for us. I mean, as far as like the first graduating senior class, nobody stepped on us, but really boosted our egos in certain ways. So, you feel like you're king of the high school, king of the world kind of thing. I go to college with the intent to become an accountant, do accounting. And somewhere along there, I lost my way, started selling drugs. I was at Carolina. I was doing very good in school, but also making a lot of money. I started my own business outside of that, learning a lot about the business world, inventory, distribution, those kind of things. I got caught doing that. Well, during that time too, did switch my major. I shifted over to screenwriting and I had a TV show on the television network and I was doing a lot of these creative things then that are now, coming back now after about, 15 years. This was back in like 2003, 2004 years. Got caught, got kicked out of school, almost went to prison for a long time, did not, and went back to a different school, finished my accounting degree, and went and did this. I mean, I own the business now, but started working at different CPA firms and understanding that I can't get a big corporate job because I have felonies. So that was kind of hard, but it made me a little bit more entrepreneurial and hustle a little bit harder at a younger age. So I'm burnt out now. I'm done with the accounting thing. Now I want to do other stuff. And that's why I do a podcast. That's why I do all other, things and got my creative juices flowing when I do those things more so than I have at my firm. I'm somebody that doesn't really work well with balance. I go really hard in one direction or another. And I kind of embrace that sometimes. I try to find balance in other areas and other ways, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, you got in trouble, right? I mean, you were being entrepreneurial, like you said, but you were doing something that at that point was illegal. Now you
still
have to do
illegal.
it legally.
No, you can't. Not with cocaine.
Oh,
Definitely
cocaine.
not.
Okay. All right. Yeah, with cocaine, no, for sure not. So, what would you tell us is the biggest lesson, I guess, that you learned from that? What changed for you in your life that made you who you are today?
Oh, I, I mean, I learned a lot of lessons. I don't really regret any of it either. I probably would regret it more if things didn't turn out okay. But through everything that I did, I kind of scarred myself or branded myself with different things. But it, creates, one door closes, another door opens. So like I said, I kind of learned a lot about business, not at business school, but in real life. I learned about sales. I learned about how to keep my margins higher. I learned about pricing things with different options, giving different options for the customer and options that work out for the business in all different directions. Learned about working, in procurement or, you know, obtaining inventory. And, so I guess I learned a lot about business. I wouldn't say I was a tycoon by any stretch of the imagination, but I felt like a pretty big person on campus. So it gave me a lot of confidence in other areas and in other ways. It was a lot. Man, I don't want to glorify any of this because none of it is, I would definitely say, don't do that. I'm not saying that I don't regret it because it was a great thing. It was terrible, stuff I did or what I did. I feel like I never really hurt anybody directly. I never really was doing anything to anybody they wouldn't already do already in other places. I wasn't ever like kind of person that would cheat anybody out of anything. I always want to make sure everybody was happy around me. And so it kind of gravitated because I was somebody who kind of pushed the boundaries or broke the rules. I always gravitated toward having fun in a lot of ways. Everybody being happy. I never wanted anybody to be upset, mad, sad, or anything like that. Everybody's got to be happy around me. That was those days. I mean, yeah, like I said, I learned a lot from it. But yeah, I mean, I still never went and got my CPA because that was another hill to climb. But I was able to get my EA. I had to write a letter to make sure I could get approved still after I took the test, and I had to, show my signs of my moral character these days in order to get a license and designation. But otherwise, it kind of I just started really openly talking about it like last year. It was always just something that was hidden in my past. It's not like it was that easy back in early 2000s to look something up, and social media was just coming out then. We had an invite only at UNC Chapel Hill because we were one of like the 5 colleges that first had Facebook.
Yeah.
So we were just testing that stuff out, and it wasn't really as prevalent as it is now, so to speak. My childhood is obviously a lot different than my kids because everything they do, everybody can see, but nobody cares anymore. Everybody can see everything, and nobody cares about anything but themselves. They're just looking at their own shit. So that's one thing to kind of keep it in perspective too. Is does it even matter?
There's a couple different ways it could go, right? I mean, obviously, people could judge you for it, and that's a risk that you've chosen to take. But it can also be empowering to a certain extent to just kind of admit to, yeah, I made a mistake. I did some things. I learned some really good lessons along the way, but I did some things that got me in trouble and made my life different, or for me to have to do things differently than many others would, right? I mean, most
Yeah.
people coming out of an accounting program, they're going to go work for one of the big 5 or big 4 accounting firms and build a career that way. And that wasn't really an option for you with that background. And so it taught you to be more gritty, I guess, and to handle things differently.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good point too, because I always found different solutions for things. If everybody was doing something one way, there's got to be a better way, especially if they've been doing it this way for so long, and haven't explored any other options. So that's what kind of set us apart within the franchise that I'm involved in. That's what kind of set me apart, in my business and just to our clients, oh, you're doing it this way. I'd never seen an accountant do that. I mean, or it's just kind of thinking differently has served me well in the past. So I don't really question that. If people question, like I used to be like, well, if everybody says that's a stupid idea or that's not going to work, I used to kind of question it and stifle it sometimes. But now I kind of lean in, and then I find out the hard way if something's not going to work or if it is.
Yeah, for sure. So what led you to accounting to begin with? I mean, was mom or dad an accountant, or you just were always drawn to
Mm,
numbers? What
I
kind of led
think
you
you
that way?
should know the answer to that if you know the name of my podcast, right? Sons of CPAs. So
That's where I was going. I was going to let you
yeah,
divulge that to me.
leading the horse to the water. My grandfather was a CPA. He had his own CPA firm, and I always just kind of grew up knowing that my dad was CPA. My dad doesn't really practice anymore. He stopped practicing when I was younger because he took on my grandfather's software arm of his firm, where he's developing software for nonprofits accounting. And my dad took more of a liking to that world than he did to the accounting. So my dad never had his own practice or anything like that. Um, he doesn't even have a license anymore. I mean, he doesn't keep it active. So, and I never even got my CPA because every guy took a different path. But yeah, that's kind of what got me into it, and it's always came very easy to me, math and all of that stuff. I'm not very good at regular math. I can't do certain multiplication without a calculator, and I can't do simple stuff, but analytically and complex things usually come easy to me. I got a mind for numbers and colors and not so much for words. So that's why I had somebody else write my bio for me. Right. I know what I like and I know it sounds good, but I usually can't. I mean, I've been really pushing myself this year because I'm trying to write a rap. So I wrote a rap already, and I kind of like it. It's getting a little bit better. I'm tweaking it, trying to push the words thing a little bit more because I that creative side. I got that itch.
Well, so that you hit on something that's, I think, a little bit unique for you because you're, let's be honest, you're a mid 30-year-old white male, but
Hmm.
you have a big love for rap and hip hop music. So let's talk about that a little bit. What got you started there?
My suburban upbringing. I grew up listening to rap. That's all I listened to growing up, hip hop. I know that's come up in our conversations once or twice. I don't know how it always comes up, but obviously, like, that's just it. And I love all music. Don't get me wrong. I love all music, whatever it is. but I guess I just took a real liking to hip hop, and maybe it's because and it's certain types too, right? Like, I like when they're throwing a lot of words at me and I got to pay attention. And that's just something that's like fascinates me, the wordplay and the poetry and the philosophy that you can get out of a lot of good hip hop. They're the truth speakers. They are the poets of modern day. They're modern day philosophers. And you get that with other music too, Bob Dylan and other types. But I think, I get it with the Chili Peppers. There's certain things that resonate, but I think in most cases it's the right hip hop that gets me going. So I'm rewriting a rap. I'm not necessarily doing anything original at all, but the one that I did write, I took an old Outcast song from '90s, AT Aliens, and I rewrote it as CP Aliens. So um,
Is that going to be the intro or the outro music for Sons of CPAs, your podcast?
it's definitely going to be something. It might be its own podcast or something. I'm not sure. Right now, I'm going to start using it if I'm doing different speaking things at accounting conferences. I think I'm going to use that as like the intro to whatever I end up doing if I can get myself to record it. See, the hard thing is I could put it on paper. Now I actually gotta perform it, and that's not going to be easy if I've never done that before. So
Yeah. Well, it definitely makes you memorable. I'll tell you, I was at a conference in probably, I'll bet you it was the beginning of 2009, and I had just started working for an organization. They were a life insurance brokerage. They did some investments as well. They had a national sales conference, and every year they had a presentation contest. So you get up and make some sort of a presentation, and there was a contest to see who won the contest when it ultimately came down to it. And the year before I had started to work, I had heard that prior year's theme was American Idol. And that was, back when American Idol was just really kind of getting going and it was big and everybody watched it and, Kelly Clarkson and all that kind of stuff. But I got up there, and as soon as I set foot on stage, the music started playing to Sweet Home Alabama. And I sang the whole first verse of Sweet Home Alabama, and then finally had them cut the music and made some joke about, oh, I got the message wrong. That was last year's theme, whatever. And then I went right into my sales presentation. And to this day, I mean, I haven't worked there in years, but I still have contact with a lot of people that I worked with there. They talk about that because it is memorable. You do something that's a spin on whatever, music or art or something that's unique, but you still get across a really good message for your business side of things. It makes it memorable. People remember it.
sounds like John Garrett has the What's Your And podcast, and he always his story is always, um, w- you know, that he did stand up while he was working at KPMG or one of the EY, one of those, and everybody remembered him for the stand up, not for anything else that he did. So it's always the other things that you do to make you stand out or unique. I never really put it into that context. I always just wanted to do it just for me. So, and I feel like that tends to always come out better if you do something for yourself than to for anything in particular. So,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely it means more to you, and I think I think all of us need some sort of an outlet that's different than what we do professionally, right? And I think you're seeing that yourself. Even you mentioned where you're bored, or you may have used a different word, but with Paget, you're finding yourself to be more passionate about other things right now. You've built a great business. You went all in. You really worked hard and built up this great business, but now your heart's kind of not in it, so to speak. And so you're finding other outlets. But as an entrepreneur, you're only able to do that if you build the structure in a way that allows you to not have to be there involved in the day to day every day, because you've got great people that are running the practice for you.
that's interesting. Yeah. And one thing I've started to learn about myself is I can't ever do anything, even if it's a hobby, if I don't see a path to making money doing it. I've always, always, always had little businesses. I mowed lawns when I was growing up. I sold CDs. I sold cocaine. I sold marijuana. I sold different drugs. Anything that I did as a hobby or for fun. I found ways to make money doing it. Um, and so that's, it's why I try to bleed those worlds together and try to make it one. Like if I want to do something on the side, that's what I want to be my thing if I really like it, or vice versa. I don't mind accounting. I kind of like that, but because I'm not actually doing it, I'm so disinterested in it because I'm so far removed. So if I was doing it, I didn't mind doing it. I liked it. I mean, I like doing the taxes. I like doing the accounting because everything had to make sense. The numbers belong in a certain place. But then as I started running the business, that doesn't really interest me. Like, yes, it's great, the business part of it, running a successful business, but I'm not involved in the end result. I don't care as much, I guess. So I don't know. I don't know if that tracks, but
Yeah, yeah, no, it makes sense to me. I mean, I think it's different. You enjoy the accounting part, right? To where everything adds up and you're providing good advice and you're helping people to finalize that tax preparation or their bookkeeping or whatever, and you're able to kind of check it off, but you're not as passionate about running the actual business, building it, taking care of the HR stuff, making sure that everything's in line from a business standpoint. You're paying your taxes, the insurance is being paid, all those kinds of things. You're just less passionate about than helping people's financial lives make sense.
yeah, when I was directly connected to the business owners, that was my passion. That's what I cared about. But I'm so far removed now. The only thing that comes up are bad things. When somebody screwed something up, if it's something the management team can't handle and it finally gets to me, it's like, all right, if that's the only thing you're seeing, then to me, it's like I'm running away almost. And I'm a little too open about that because I'm not really running away. I mean, things are still going well, and I want them to run on their own. I think that's sustainable too. If I have things that I'm paying attention to, but I can't be straddling two things. That's one thing as well. It's kind of hard to straddle both ends of that for me because I don't have any balance. Right, I'm either all in on something or I'm a one or a zero. When
Yeah,
it comes to that, it's very binary.
yeah,
Not bimodal. I'm binary.
yeah. So you mentioned earlier when you switched majors, right, for a while there, and you switched to screenwriting. It reminded me of an interview that I listened to a while back, a couple weeks ago. So Lincoln Financial Group is who Landon and I affiliate with as our broker dealer or our attachment to a FINRA or an SEC firm, right? So we own our own practice, but that's who we're connected with. Well, Lincoln Financial Group is going to be having a new CEO come on board for the first time in quite a while. So the current CEO's stepping down, becoming chairman of the board. New CEO's coming in. She's a female. She's been with Lincoln for about 10 years. But when she started college, she went to Temple University in Philadelphia for performance ballet. And then maybe 1 year in, she was good at ballet. She enjoyed it, but she wasn't super passionate about it. She walked across campus, ends up walking into and changing her major completely from performance ballet to actuarial sciences. Like that just, that seems to me like accounting, screenwriting, performance ballet, actuarial sciences, like completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
She was at the right place at the right time and at the right lecture and the right topic to be passionate about that. I mean, it is what it is. There's probably definitely a deep rooted subconscious reason why she was drawn to that. And I feel like for me, that's because of the difference in my parents. Like my mom has always been the creative side. She always has some side thing that she's doing right now. It was called Boomer Buds, and now it's Boho Botanicals or something. She's doing CBD type stuff now. She's always about the entrepreneur things, and she always had the creative side of all of the software business and everything, and that's half of me. And then my dad was a CPA, and he's so it's kind of like I'm the product of both of those, and they're both built into me. And as I get older and as I do more things, I see more and more of both of them in me, and that they're definitely opposites, right? The yin and the yang. A successful partnership, a successful marriage, a successful anything, friendship is always two people that are bringing different things to the table from different sides of the room.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a fair statement, and not something I've thought about in a while. But I'm a parent. You're a parent. You've got three kids. Yours are still pretty young compared to mine. But my oldest just turned 22. My youngest is about to turn 19. And it's been interesting to watch them through their high school and now college years and see kind of what they gravitate to, what they're good at, because my wife and I are very different people as well. My wife is not a math person. My wife, is not a science person. My wife has a degree in history, and she loves history. She loves research. She loves to write. She loves, all those types of things. And so, we can sit there and watch game shows, for example, together, and we can get all the questions right, but she gets some right and I get some right, because combined we're a really strong team, but separately we all have, areas that we're lacking in, and we have completely different interests.
Yeah, I think a lot of, especially younger or people that just don't really know or tend to be a lot very attracted or are not attracted to people that are like them. That's really where the passion and the fire is. And then you realize, you're most suited to be with somebody that's not like you at all. Me and my wife couldn't be more opposite in every way, but it works very well in the house, and together as a partners. So I like that. That's a good point. Like the trivia type things. When you have a group of people, you want to get people that are definitely bringing something else to the table.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely want a well-rounded team for sure. So you don't need a bunch of accountants going to trivia night together.
Depends on the trivia.
Yeah. Well, so talk to us about Sons of CPAs. How long you been doing it? What is it that you're hoping to accomplish with Sons of CPAs?
I just want attention. That's all. That's all I want. I just want people to pay attention to me. That's what I always wanted when I was a kid. Now, I mean, I think in the beginning we started doing it because a good friend of mine has his own. It's his dad's CPA firm. To be fair, he kind of runs it. He changed it a lot when he came on, but it's his dad's firm. They're a lot bigger than us, but good friend of mine, and he's in the Charlotte, North Carolina area or South Carolina. I'm here, so we kind of bring a unique perspective. I'm half Jewish, he's Jewish, so there's that part of it too. We're both accountants, but we couldn't be more different in every way. We got similar senses of humor, and I had two friends actually early. This was January. It was like November of 2020. And one of them wanted to do a podcast with me, but one thing he said to me, he said, "We can't curse on there. We got to keep it clean." And I took note. I was like, all right. And the other one, the one that I ended up doing with, he said, the one thing stipulation he said was, we have to curse. Like we have to keep it real. That's Ackerman. That's the one I ended up doing the podcast with. He's my co-host. Still is, but I have a lot of different co-hosts now. So this has turned into something a little bit bigger than just that. He wanted to just be like, us talking about stuff. And then I always I was hungry to learn about this. I kept bringing on different guests. And, I think our main goal was to question the industry, question everything, and try to move the accounting industry forward because it's still pretty archaic. So that's our audience. That's what we, focused on. But I'm all over the place. And I started to learn more and more about myself as I was doing this podcast. And I was doing all the editing, spending maybe 4 hours every episode, which turned into like 8 hours every episode, and just over analyzing all of it, trying to make it really good. The conversations got better over time, but what we're really aiming to do is to question the industry and move the industry forward. And I think we're starting to do that. I mean, people are starting to find the podcast on their own, say how much they like it. Our listener base is growing. And obviously, I like all of that stuff. Like people reaching out to me to do different speaking things. And now we have a lot of sponsors. I have another sales position now where I'm working with another podcast creator. And we have a network of podcasts that we're kind of working with now too, all within the accounting industry. So it's like as much as I try to run away from it, it keeps following me in everything I do. So I'm embracing that. I could have my firm, I could not have my firm, but I'm still going to be deeply rooted and engaged in the accounting community because that's what I know. So if I do rap stuff, it's going to be CP aliens. It's going to be different, different parodies of different old songs and a take on it in the accounting world. So it's a very niche Venn diagram of accountants and people that listen to rap or like rap is very small. So I don't think, it's going to be anything that great. You're not going to hear that shit on the radio, but if you're in that accounting world, maybe you know what it is.
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot more that I want to talk to you about with that podcast, but let's take a quick break here real quick and we'll hear a call to action for our listeners and then we'll jump back in.
Hey there, Tycoons. Austin Peterson here, co-host of Tycoons of Small Biz. If you think you have what it takes to be considered a tycoon and you're wondering how you could become a featured guest, please follow and then message us at Tycoons of Small Biz on LinkedIn. We'd love to have a conversation with you to see if it is a mutually good fit, and if so, we'll get you scheduled for an interview. If you're unsure about being a guest on our podcast, but are contemplating selling your business over the next few years and you'd like to know what your business is worth, please also follow us and then message us on LinkedIn for your no-obligation, informal valuation of your business. We look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for listening to the Tycoons of Small Biz podcast. And now, back to today's program.
Good idea. I should do that too. I don't ever ask for followers or anything like that. I should, but I don't. I don't ever ask for anything of the listeners except to listen.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tell you, there are things that we've learned along the way. We're coming up on our 100th episode. I don't know how many episodes you guys have dropped so far, but you learn with each episode what to do differently. And, the podcast hopefully gets better over time. I'm sure if I went back and listened to the first episode, I would be, embarrassed at how it sounded and how it came off compared to the way that it sounds today. So, it's a constant learning with everything, right?
Yeah. Now I'm promoting everybody else. I don't even promote our own stuff. I figure, but yeah, I mean, our audio's gotten a bit better. I care a lot about the audio now. I didn't really even know the difference. Now when I listen to things, I'm just like, I can't listen to this. This audio is terrible. So
yeah, it makes a difference for sure. So tell us a little bit more about what it is that you've got going on now, because you mentioned, you started doing some sales with these other podcasts and they're all accounting related podcasts. And so just tell us a little bit more about what it is that you're doing and how you guys are doing that in the podcasting world. And then we'll circle back and talk about, the accounting industry and where you think it needs to go from here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Earmark CPE, new company, friend of mine, started back in January of this year, officially launched. You can get continuing education for listening to podcasts. And I knew he had something, as something special there. There's a lot of podcasts on that network now, and a lot of listeners, a lot of people engaged because they know what he's, we're trying to just continue to move the industry forward and do something that's not really been done before. So hosting a lot of different shows on the network, getting CPE for that. Right now, my involvement is just head of sales. So I'm selling ads from sponsors to place in different podcasts. Also doing channel sales. So creators, if they want their podcast on there and they want us to do the question creation and keep it on the network, just a monthly subscription for that kind of stuff. And then eventually premium subscriptions for firms to get all of their employees on there. And then, they can set up education portals for their employees to, here's the podcast that we want you to listen to and get your CPE on. So it's just continuing education. So just continuing to move things forward.
So how does that work then? After they listen to the podcast, do they have to log in somewhere, answer some questions? How do they verify that they listened to it, right? Because a webinar, I know there's tracking, and obviously in person is the way that it used to be done. So how does that portion of it work?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when they open up the app, download Earmark CP, Earmark app on iPhone or Android, open up the app and then pick the course that you want. And then it leads you to the course. So whether it's a podcast or even sometimes we have YouTube stuff on there, watch it. And then you go back and then you do questions. So it's a series of informational questions first, and then 3 to 5 questions that you got to get right in order to pass. And if you get 80% or above or something like that, then you get your CPE credit for that. So we're working on offering a little more expanded of ethics. That's the big one. Everybody needs their ethics, so that's going to be a premium offering eventually. There's no ethics on there currently, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy. Once you get the app and then you set that up, just kind of go in there and answer the questions after you've listened to a pod. And if it's something that you already listened to, just go in there and check the box that you listened to it and then answer the questions.
Well, I mean, I think that that's a big step forward for the accounting industry, right? Because, I mean, so I've got to do continuing education for my CFP. I've also got to do it for, insurance licenses, for example, and securities licenses. And usually I can take one course and have it count for, all of the different designations that I have, et cetera. But we're still not to that point. I mean, I have taught CPE classes via webinar and in person for CPAs. It has been difficult to come by in the past, right? And everybody kind of puts it off till the last minute, and they're like, oh my gosh, I've got to get 12 hours before this date, and they're trying to, cram them in. And so we would go into CPA firms and bring in lunch, and we would teach,
Lunch
teach
and learn.
CPE.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool to see that they're going that direction. I wonder if they're doing that in our industry too, and I just am not aware of it yet. But that's
Well,
that's kind of unique for the accounting industry.
trying to build some awareness for it. Yeah, I mean, it's a growing thing, and I think this is here to stay. To be able to listen to something and then get your education, because that's like audiobooks, like anything else. A lot of people listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
A lot of people listen to their stuff. That's what I do, and I like to go on a walk, and just put my headphones on and listen to something. Less
Yep.
distractions.
Yep, I do the same thing. It's either a podcast or a book on Audible that I'm listening to when I'm exercising, and it's a good way to get some information in and kind of take the focus off of the pain that you're putting your physical body through at the time. Tell us a little bit about kind of what you think about the accounting industry, right? So the insurance industry is another one of those industries that I think is kind of slow to change, slow to adopt certain things. That's the way it's always been, so to speak. So talk to us about that on the accounting side. Like what is it that you think has been done a certain way forever and needs to change, and maybe some ideas that you have to change that going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the accounting industry is very interesting animal, because you're dealing with like any other regulatory, you've got on the accounting side a lot of banks that are kind of holding the cards for a lot of financial information. And so when it comes to bookkeeping and accounting and automating that was kind of hard to corral all of that into one place. And there's platforms like Zero, QuickBooks is doing it now too, that can actually feed all that information in. I know you guys are using a platform that does something similar, where you're connecting all these different institutional accounts, pulling it into one place and continuing to update that feed.
Yeah.
So, you answered a question, and I went very hyper specific, like any old accountant would do. I'm an accountant at heart, and dive into the details, right? So you got a lot of regulatory industries and institutions. On the other side of it, the tax side, you've got a very, very, very complex body of laws that's governing how we do things. And then you have the IRS, which is stuck in the 60s. So it's very hard, and outside of just an accounting firm or CPA firm, to update things, because you don't even know what's coming next, and you got to fax the IRS, and you got to deal with this bank who's asking for something that's very archaic, and they don't and they need it handwritten and paper. Like, it's just so you're dealing with all these external forces, and then internally you've got a generational shift that's kind of happening right now too, where a lot of boomer age are kind of retiring, skipped over Generation X to a degree, and now you have a lot of millennials that want to do things their own way, and either they're just doing it on their own, and there's just no synergy there too between generations. So you have a lot of firms that are doing things their own way in their own silo, and very traditionally old school. And then you have people that are just kind of Wild West doing it however they want, just kind of throwing things around. They don't even care what the end product looks like. And they're just, trying to get it quick and dirty as they can. And you don't see, I mean, you got some middle ground, but there's a pretty big disparity across the whole industry. And there's no central governing board, really. I mean, you got the IRS and you've got, the AICPA and you've got EAs out there, and then you have people that are not even licensed to do anything. And so they're just kind of, doing books because they learned how at their fraternity, and then now they're and not fraternity, but it's all different things. They're all different types out there. So, it's a lot of opportunity right now and a lot of potential to automate, to get people on the same page. But these days, the biggest argument I hear is people keeping up with time. You have people tracking their time or billing on time. Everybody's talking about time, and this time and prices and everything else. And I think that's obviously the kind of the next step, is to coming to some form of consensus on what's the right way to do things. There is really no right way, right or wrong way. There's just what ways work best for you or for your firm or for your practice. And then there's every other way. And it's just kind of just a lot of, the world's a lot flatter now too, ever since the internet, and people are from vastly different parts of the world are connected. So we are starting to converge a little bit on our thoughts and our theories because of social media, because of all these other, different ways of connecting people and connecting ideas, that you don't have as many silos of people in, different parts of the world that are thinking the same way because they're paying attention to the same things. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of hope for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, that leads to, the metaverse and Web 3.0 talking there, right? I mean, you're talking about how there is that linear or, the flatter world. Everybody is more connected than they've ever been globally. And we had a guest on the program probably a month or so ago, maybe a little longer than that. And he owns a construction firm, general contractor, commercial builder, basically. And everybody thought, he was going to come in and talk about what the commercial, building industry is going to look like. What should we worry about from a real estate standpoint? Are we going to go into a recession, or, COVID had everybody moving out of their offices? Everybody expected him to talk about that. And instead, he talked about where construction can go and will go over the next 20 years because of the metaverse and Web 3.0 technology. And he gave this example of, in Arizona, we do a lot of construction in the middle of the night because it's so hot during the summer that the construction guys are out there in the middle of the night to be able to deal with the temperatures. And so, he gave this example of, say you've got a laborer who's working on something and his first language is Spanish, for example. And then you've got another guy that he's working alongside, his first language is English, and they're looking at these plans that are written in English, but they're not quite sure what the engineering is telling them to do on a certain aspect of a building. And so they can put an Oculus, VR, headset on, and they can connect with an engineer in India who's up, it's their middle of the day. And so he's got his Oculus on, he's looking at the plans with him. He's speaking to him in his native tongue, but he's hearing it in his own native tongue to be able to know what should be going on, all because of this technology that exists or will continue to get better over the years with this type of metaverse and Web 3.0 technology.
I mean, it's still just new iterations of what we have now. Our phones that are in our pockets pretty much have the ability now, without putting the goggles on, you can jump on a call with somebody and have it still translated and have him looking on a screen because you sent him a picture of what you're looking at. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think we need the goggles for that. I think we're doing it now more or less. Like right now, we're in the metaverse. We're both on the same screen. We're both talking to each other through the internet. I'm in North Carolina. You're in Arizona. We're, talking about all the same things. We put our goggles on and we're just 3D, right? This is 2D, put the
Yeah.
goggles on and it's 3D. So I'm not too excited about that yet. That doesn't fire me up because I still think it's no different than what we're already doing. It's just 3D. It's kind of like we grew up watching, or, you know, well, not us, but yeah, I mean, grew up watching. There is a generation that grew up with comics and just reading comics. That's all 2D. I guess it's still 2D when you're watching it on TV, but the difference between a comic book and a Marvel movie now is incredible, right? Like, and it's the same stories and very much like same vast majority of characters, but they're all on screen now, and it's all like special, right? It's all extra. But the comics at one point were great too. That was a thing.
Yeah.
So they're still big. Comics are still big. I don't know. I don't know what point I'm trying to make there, but I think it's just still just the next step in that, right? We put the goggle on, and then we're all living in our basement still. We're all still doing the same things in our house, but now we can see the person like next to us instead of on the computer screen.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right about that. And, it's connecting people throughout the world. It's connecting families even. I mean, even just the fact that over the last almost 3 years now, we've been able to connect on Zoom with family members that we usually would just talk to on the phone. And, FaceTime was a difficult thing to try to teach to my wife's, 93 and 89-year-old parents, right? But they got them connected on Zoom. They got them a nice, microphone and speaker so that they could hear well enough. And they were having, family meetings or family, calls that they would have on Zoom every Sunday for a while. And then it slowed down to once a month, the first Sunday of the month or whatever. But it's pretty cool technology. I think from a construction standpoint, that's probably way more high tech than is normal, though.
Oh yeah, than what they're used to because they're just using their two ways. They used to have their what were those Nextels? All the construction used to have their Nextels.
Yep.
This is a big deal.
Definitely.
I don't mean to downplay it, but it doesn't really excite me. Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. No, I get it. All right. So we've just got a few minutes left. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you. What if we fast forward, whatever you can choose 3, 5, 7, 10 years from now, what's going to be different about the accounting industry than we see today? Or you can choose to just go with your own firm. What's different about where you are, or where do you see yourself in that period of time?
It's a good question. We ask that question to a lot of guests, and I can't even think of a good answer that I could regurgitate that they have said on our podcast. Everybody's got their own take on things. I mean, I think it's honestly, I don't think we're going to ever have a huge, huge shift like we did in COVID. COVID kind of sped stuff up. So I think, it's still going to be different iterations of what we're already doing. People are going to agree on certain things. There will be a standard way of doing certain things in the accounting world. I don't think that everything's going to be automated, but I think that we'll finally have a cloud tax platform that is not desktop based that works. I think that it'll be a lot more automated when it comes to taxes, but they're not going to be fully automated. I think there's going to be a lot more out of the box offerings for people to do their own stuff. And I think accountants are going to look more or less like advisors than bookkeepers and tax fill the boxes, and the people that are doing the very general low level compliance work aren't going to be out of a job if they know how to talk to their clients, because it's the relationship that we're going to be selling more and more, and the advice that we can give, and the assistance that we can provide, and just that, it's kind of like what you guys do. It's that somebody that can kind of help make decisions, and when it comes to taxes, or when it comes to just general business questions on what's working and what's not, because you have that scope of, here's our client base and they're all a lot like you, and this is what they're doing. So it's being able to provide that bridge between a lot of different people, practically speaking, and that one client, and make a difference for them. So I think that's going to be the key to a successful accounting firm then, and I think it still is now. So that's probably what'll be there. I don't think our firm is going to change that much, except for I do hope that we have a single industry focus. If I stick around, I kind of want to either actually honestly, I probably just want to start something new. I think our client base is too broad, and I would like to start something from scratch and start something new that focuses on just this one and kind of start small, just like our other firm, just like my firm now, and kind of grows into its own thing. But honestly, my direction shifts so much. I pivot all the time, and I'm just like I decide I want to do this, and then 2 weeks later I want to do something else, or a year later my interests change. So I don't know. I got to stop listening to myself. I got to start listening to others.
No, you're right though on the advice piece for sure, because we've seen it in our own industry, right? I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with Robinhood. There's the E-Trades of the world. There's all these platforms that you can set up your own investment portfolio, but financial planning is a lot more than just setting up an investment portfolio, right? Just like accounting is a lot more than being compliant with your taxes, right? And so there's the advice that has to come into play, and that's really where you differentiate yourself versus, because if you just want to compete on putting together a portfolio, and then there's just a race to the bottom for fees, right? Same thing with accounting. And so it has to be around the advice and that professional background and expertise that helps people accomplish what they're trying to accomplish.
The future is in the people. It's not in the tech. We're going to revert back to being people again after we've put our goggles on and realized we need that real life interaction. We'll take our goggles off.
All right. So I'll put you on the spot then. If you don't have an answer, that's fine. But you talk about being focused on one industry. So do you have an industry in mind that you'd want to be focused on if you started a new firm?
Accounting.
So you want to be the accountant for accounting firms?
That would be kind of cool. It's an industry I know.
That would be interesting. Yeah, I'd love to see how that comes together for you.
Otherwise, I maybe, I don't know. I mean, we're talking about psychiatrists, but honestly, that's not the greatest industry to be in either. I mean, I don't know. I don't like making those decisions because I feel like I'm leaving other stuff on the table. It's like, all good choices sometimes too.
All right. Well, we're up against time, Scott, but Sons of CPAs, people can find you by listening to your podcast on Sons of CPAs. Where else can people track you down?
Twitter, I'm on there now. I jumped onto Twitter early this year. It's just my name at Scott Scarano. I'm on LinkedIn, obviously. And yeah, those are the two places. I only focus on blue apps. I don't really go expand out from there. But I can't say that anymore. I don't really go on Facebook. So just LinkedIn and Twitter. It's usually where I am.
Gotcha.
Poke around there every now and then.
Very cool. Well, Scott, thanks so much for the interview. Thanks for the opportunity to have you on our show. And
thanks for having me on.
Stay in touch. Yeah, you bet.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, proudly hosted by Austin Peterson and Landon Mance. Austin and Landon are comprehensive financial planning professionals specializing in financial, estate, and succession planning for small business owners. Austin and Landon have offices in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and represent clients in 14 states throughout the country. Join Austin, Landon, and the featured Tycoons live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. right here on Business RadioX and your favorite podcast.